Hello, everyone. Nathan Winters, president of the Wyoming Family Alliance, and it's wonderful to join you from the Wyoming Historic Supreme Court Chambers. This is a historic place for a number of reasons. It's actually on the National Register of Historic Places for the entire United States of America. It was first here where women were given the opportunity to become voting citizens of a state. As such a historic place, it feels like a wonderful place to tell you about the Wyoming Education Savings Account. Is now called the Steamboat Scholarship Act, and so it had a slight change in the Senate that gave it a new name. But that passed on Thursday this last week and gave us an opportunity to really watch so many teams come together to make sure that we had universal education savings accounts available for kindergarten through 12th grade. And what that opens the door for. Right now, in the state of Wyoming, we are number one in the nation. We tie with one other state as a state that has the most percentage of children going to a public education, 97%. And what that means is that there are a lot of folk who really have no alternative other than homeschool, and many people don't have either the financial means to do that, or secondly, they're a single parent home. They simply can't do that. And so when you look at the opportunity that's been opened up for a parent to send a child to a place where they can receive the education that best fits their need, this has been a historic moment for the state of Wyoming. And so this last week has been monumental in that way. Right now, so many things are happening as we're closing up at the end of session. We still have about 4 days left ahead of us, but that means that major deadlines are coming up. So already, committee of the whole in both chambers, that's happening. And but once that deadline is over, then that means that the next thing we're going to see is everything has to pass second reading or third reading, or they face those deadlines as well, because we are marching rapidly toward the end of the legislative session. I want to give you now a rundown of the 10 different bills that have now gone through the House and the Senate and now have been given either House Enrolled Act or Senate Enrolled Act number. What I mean by that is what has been House Bill 42 will now be known as House Enrolled Act number 26. That changes once it literally becomes a law, or it's actually sitting on the governor's desk. But it will be known as this from this time forward. And there's 10 of these different bills. The first one I want to tell you about is regulation of surgical abortions. This is a bill that just ensures that an abortion clinic has to have admitting privileges in a hospital. They also have to have the basic sanitary things necessary to ensure that people are protected in these very heinous procedures. Next, we have the Homeschool Freedom Act. This ensures for homeschoolers across the state, there's been a reporting requirement to this point that often it doesn't do anything. It goes to a stack of papers somewhere in a school district, and there's no real way to either look through them for school district employees, not in a way that makes much sense. So really it's just shuffling a piece of paper from one pile to the next pile. In this case, why then shuffle piles around? And so this really, I think, just cleans things up in the law. And so that's passed all the way through thus far. Next, we also have House Bill 64, Chemical Abortions Ultrasound Requirement. This was Speaker of the House Nyman. This was one that just made sure that a lady who is being really pushed into the idea that they need to have an abortion, it gives them the opportunity to see that baby in the womb. And first of all, it gives them a medical checkup that can be very helpful. But this is a real help to a lot of mothers. And I think it also, of course, is a tremendous help to that baby in the womb, especially in the consideration of what is about to happen, where that live being would then be killed. And so this is a very helpful piece of legislation. The next bill I want to tell you about is House Bill 72. This is Protecting Women's Privacy in Public Spaces. This is a bill that will ensure that women have the right to a private space. in a restroom or wherever it may be, if they are a public employee or in a public space in the state of Wyoming. This is very, very solid, very sound legislation. And Representative Lawley has worked on this very, very carefully for quite a long time. I'm so appreciative of the fact now that it is House Enrolled Act number 48. We also, of course, have Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act. I've already mentioned that to you, very historic. Next, we also have one for compelled speech is not free speech. Senator Lynn Hutchings brought this, and it's very, very helpful the way that she has argued this over the last several years. She's actually brought this bill before. This year, it's now made it all the way through the process and is now a Senate Enrolled Act. And this simply says that a school district employee or a public employee here in the state of Wyoming should not be forced to call someone by a gender pronoun they clearly are not. That forces a person to become complicit with what they know to not be true. That's compelled speech. That now has passed all the way through the process. It's sitting on the governor's desk. And I look forward to hopefully reporting to you that that will be all the way through here in the coming week. Another bill near and dear to my heart, Senate File 103, which is entitled Terminating and Defunding Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, is now all the way through the process. It's now Senate Enrolled Act number 61. This was Senator Sherry Steinmetz. She's worked so hard on this legislation. Last year, as I've reported before, she worked on making sure that the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion was defunded at the University of Wyoming. But next is really looking into how has DEI, as it's usually called, how has it been baked into different parts of different required programs across the university campus. And we've been able to find a number of those places. This program just ensures that students will not be forced into studying Marxism while they would rather just be studying a nursing program. I'm so thankful for the hard work that's gone into this legislation right here. One sad thing to report is House Bill 222, Medical Ethics Defense Act. I believe it's very, very necessary. It made it all the way through the process in one chamber. It then made it to a Senate hearing in the other chamber, and sadly was voted down 3-2, just narrowly missing the opportunity to be heard by the Senate as a whole. This legislation is very important to protect our medical experts from being forced into a position where they might have to perform a surgical procedure, such as, for instance, a sex change operation or, say, an abortion. It just ensures that doctors and nurses have the opportunity to live up to the Hippocratic Oath and do no harm on a patient. And so if they're put in a position where they're told that they're going to have to do a procedure they know would violate the Hippocratic Oath, this would have protected them in that circumstance. Wyoming still needs this bill. So we're going to come back and consider this again in years to come. Wyoming Family Alliance is going to make sure that happens. With that, there are a number of bills in play, and things are going very fast here. And so we ask you, if you would continue to pray for, to continue to engage your senators, your representatives, and make sure that they have an opportunity to hear your voice, a positive voice from your district. And I know right now, many of them are fatigued. I've been there before, because they will be working many, many late nights as these deadlines come up. And so would you just continue to lift them up in prayer, send them an encouraging note, and more than anything, just thank the Lord for the good that's already been done. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to know more, please go to wyomingfamily.org, wyomingfamily.org, and of course you can always go to wyofambilltracker.com. Thanks so much for joining.